Hey guys, it's 2023. Welcome.
2023. What's up, everyone?
Excellent.
Oh,
Give it a minute for everybody to file in the room. First of all, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us today. I know doing a webinar like the day after everybody's back to work or might be a little bit rough, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedule, not only investing it in yourself, but spending it here with us. If this is your first time joining, welcome to the Passive Investing Made Simple show. Here we tackle all things passive investing so you can go into your first or next deal with confidence. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you visit and register at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com to get notified of all future masterclasses. Check out our open deals. And if you'd like to, hop on the phone with myself or even Taylor. Taylor will give out his contact information here in a little bit. But well, I'll just dive in. Taylor, thanks for joining me today. Taylor Koo, he is a member of our investor relations team with passiveinvesting.com and is joining me today to help me break down and discuss the differences, the advantages of investing with operators and syndicators. What are the differences? What do these terms even mean? Taylor, thanks for joining me.
yeah, thanks for having me. It's actually quite a pleasure to be joining you on the first Masterclass episode of 2023. So I'm very happy to be here. And I'm actually really excited just for this topic too, just because I know that these terms, operator and sponsors, they can be used interchangeably. I mean, shoot, even I have used these terms interchangeably as well, but there are some slight nuances to these two terms that have different assumptions. And so I would love to at least just first break down the differences between the two. And so, Whitney, starting off with operator, how would you break down the term operator?
Yeah. So the term operator is really a person or company that's in charge of finding, closing, operating the deal. It also includes hiring and overseeing property management, and most importantly, executing the business plan. Now, like you said, Taylor, they often, if somebody is the operator, they can also be called the sponsor and or syndicator. Okay. So if they're the operator, they can be called other terms. But that's not the case if somebody is not the operator, okay? They can't wear all of those hats. So, and typically, and I'm sure you're going to get into this question here in a second, but, oftentimes with an operator, they may not want to or can't raise all the funds in order to close a deal. So they then bring on support in order to help do that.
And so, with bringing on the supports, I mean, they could be called, co-GPs, co-sponsors then. And I think what's also pretty fascinating too, once you go into just the syndicator definition or just the operator, there's also still other forms of roles within the operator. So, I mean, you have your acquisitions, their asset manager, then you even have your key principal. So, I mean, I think it is really important to at least break down the two, but understand that there is still some slight nuances within the term operator.
Yeah. And kind of moving on to those terms, sponsor and syndicator, those terms really identify, like you said, those roles and who is marketing the deal, who will help raise the financing. They may or may not actually have a role in execution and management of the business plan once acquisition is complete. With legal changes with the Securities and Exchange Commission, for a sponsor or syndicator to participate in the back end equity split, the GP split, the general partner split, they do need to have some sort of active role ongoing beyond just raising the capital. But that's really, like I said, that's kind of like the nuance there, right? The operator is handling all the day-to-day. Sponsor and syndicator might have some sort of ongoing role that's unrelated to the day-to-day execution of the asset. And it's really helpful to understand, like, when you're investing, what type of, who is your partner? Who is your general partner?
Yeah. And so, I would actually love if we can dive into that a little bit more in terms of just the roles of the co-GP, because when I hear a co-GP, and I feel like just across just the industry, syndication industry itself, a lot of people just think co-GPs are just strictly raising capital, but they cannot just strictly be raising capital just because that is against SEC compliance. And so they have to, and I know you mentioned this already, but I really want to hit this home, is they have to actually have an active role within the deal, or else if they are just raising capital, they're going to need a securities license to do so. And I mean, this question comes up, I mean, when we're talking with some other investors that are from co-GPs and how they work together, we can't just say that they're bringing equity to a deal. That's a big no-no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, some of those roles that a co-GP might take on would be participation in asset management. They might take over some sort of part of the legal, aspects of running the asset. They might take over the financial aspects of running the asset. I've seen co-GP relationships where there is an operator that is managing the day-to-day aspects of the asset, and then there's a co-GP that is bringing all the money, everything. So they own all the investor relations, the tax, handling all the taxes, all the financial and accounting around that. So, those relationships, I kind of describe this, when I was doing a wealth of investor calls, is the general partnership is like slices of a pie, right? You've got your legal, your accounting, your operations and asset management, and those slices that, you just need to make sure people have multiple slices of the pie that they fit into, because just bringing capital is not one of them. That's not a slice of the pie. They have to have one of those other rules within that pie that they're taking on.
Absolutely. And so, emphasizing this when you are talking to, let's say, a co-GP or an operator, I mean, just asking them what their exact role is when you are vetting that operator, I think is just a huge plus. Make sure you know what they're doing, especially if you're going to be investing your hard-working funds into their deal. So, and now that brings me into the next topic of conversation, because I don't necessarily think it should be co-GPs versus operators, because there are times where you're going to be talking to two people with the same exact deal. And so I'd love, and if an investor is going to talk to a co-GP, talking to an operator, they're investing in the same deal, but how do you decide between choosing one or the other? Because there are both benefits to either of them.
Yeah. So, really that kind of, that decision probably has already been made for you by who you talk to first. So there's kind of an unwritten rule when it comes to passive investing, in this space, that if you've already talked to whichever group you talk to first, say it's one of our co-GPs, you are their investor, unless we put out a deal that they've, for whatever reason, aren't participating in. Okay. So all of your relations would go through them, vice versa, if you spoke to passiveinvesting.com first and then saw our deal on another platform, you're always going to see the same terms back and forth between our co-GPs and our operations teams, our team. So, really it depends on who you talk to first. Now, that's not the same, that doesn't apply across the industry. That kind of unwritten rule of whoever you talk to first generally applies. However, sometimes a co-sponsor is able to, on certain deals, able to secure a different set of terms than the operator, if you went directly. And one of the names that comes to mind, this is for me, my personal experience. I just for giggles signed up on Grant Cardone's website, and I was like, I want to see what kind of deals he has. And, I talked to them, they were like, you got $250,000 to invest. That's our minimum. And I'm like, I mean, even if I did, I didn't want to do that. So that was not the check that I wanted to write. I wasn't there. However, about a month later, I saw the same deal from one of their co-sponsors. And I know, typically we don't, we haven't seen Grant Cardone do a whole lot of co-sponsors, but I saw this come up. And when I talked to that group, they were able to secure a different set of terms. That way they could bring additional people in. Sometimes a co-sponsor, you have a better working relationship with them. Sometimes you see, you're able to see different deals across them. But generally at the end of the day, when you're working with a co-sponsor, you're probably able to access the deal that you wouldn't be able to access yourself. But again, it goes, something that you said here, Taylor, is that you have to understand deal by deal, not just have the conversation once with the operator, but deal by deal. What is that co-sponsor's role within the deal? Because it can change, right? And so, I guess this gets down to like, how do you understand which relationship is right for you? One of the advantages to investing with directly with an operator is the operator, again, handles that day-to-day management of the assets. So they're closer to the asset. They're probably making those day-to-day decisions. So it really depends on what your goal is. If you're somebody that needs tighter control, speak to the horse's mouth, right? Like when a decision happens, maybe searching to, making sure that your sponsor your sponsor and syndicator is also the operator might be a better fit. If you're somebody who's, I don't want to, maybe, encounters, a co-GP and you really love how they do business, you really resonate with them because that's super important. You're going to be in partnership with them for 5 to 7 years, more than likely. Just make sure that you have some sort of clarity around what their role is in the asset and that you're comfortable with that. So those are a couple different ways, but it boils down to being able to ask that question for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I think it was well said all across the board. I really have nothing else to add after that, to be quite honest. You did a great just overview of the two.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you're here live, we usually transition into our live part of the show, Ask Me Anything part of the show. So make sure to visit your Q&A box and dump any questions you have in there. Taylor and I will be hanging out here for a few minutes and answering any questions that you might have. But again, Taylor, thanks for joining me today, because really, I just wanted to touch on the subject because you and I have seen a lot of kind of conversation around this, and it's often, not very well delineated, right? And it's when you're investing passively, what are the 3 things you get to control beyond your goals and risk tolerance? It's who you invest with, where you invest, and which deal you go into. So it's super important to understand this relationship.